أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. All praise is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and salutations be upon the noble Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We've covered quite a few years in the life of the Prophet ﷺ until now, roughly 53 years of the blessed life of the Prophet ﷺ, the 40 years before his prophethood and the 13 years after the proclamation of Nubuwwah. And we've come to a pivotal stage in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, also beginning the new chapter for Islam itself. Where everything will change and everything has changed. So inshallah, what we will do today is first we'll have a quick recap for the new people who have joined our gathering so that they can kind of understand what's happened so far, and also to refresh our minds on what has been achieved up until now, and also what has been sacrificed up until now, and how the Muslims need to move forward. But before we begin today's lecture, I want to remind everybody that today is the 17th fast. Is that correct? Yes? Today is the 17th of Ramadan, and it's important for us to understand our history just the way we try to understand the life of the Prophet ﷺ, which is part of our history and it's part of our life. Similarly, we should always try to remember the main events, if not all the events that transpired in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And on the 17th of Ramadan, this was the battle of Badr that took place between the Muslims and the Mushriks. So all of those, aggression, all of that aggression and that anger that was brewing for such a long time finally came out in the battlefield, which was in the battle of Badr. And this is the month in which, as you will remember, Sayyidah Khadija al-Kubra radiallahu ta'ala anha, she passed away. Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha also passed away this month. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anha also passed away in this month. And so did Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha passed away in this month, as well as the Battle of Badr took place in this month, as well as the month of the Nuzul al-Quran, the Laylatul Qadr. There's so many things that took place in this month of Ramadan. So it's important for us to recognize who we are, because in order for us to form our identity, we need to understand our history. What is our history? Who are we? And then, inshallah, as we move forward, we will understand and appreciate who we were and what we need to become. Many of us don't know who we are, and then we try to have a mixed match of a bit of this and a bit of that. But by understanding your background, understanding your history, it will give you a better perspective on what you need to become in the future. So just a brief summary on the events that took place on the 17th of Ramadan, which was the Battle of Badr. 313 Muslims were standing before 1,000 non-Muslims in the Battle of Badr. And this was obviously a war between Haqq and Batil, between false and between right. And obviously the Prophet ﷺ, he had prepared the Sahaba up until now, but he had never prepared them for violence, he had never prepared them for any form of aggression. This was necessary to defend Islam and not as a preemptive strike. So 14 Muslims, they passed away, they became shaheed, shuhada in this battle. 70 non-Muslims were killed and 70 non-Muslims were taken as prisoners. So that's just a brief summary of the events that took place on the 17th of Ramadan. And hopefully, inshallah, you'll go onto the website and you'll find lots of resources available on the history of Islam and related to the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we come back to today's topic, which is yesterday we left at the Prophet ﷺ staying 3 days and nights in the Mount of Hira, and then him taking the companion of Bakr Siddiq and going through the desert, going towards the west, going towards the south, and finally making their way north to Medina al-Munawwara. And they take a guide who was a non-Muslim, but they took him as the guide and they trusted him because he was a trustworthy person. And then along the way, Surah ibn Malik, because you will remember, he tried to capture the Prophet ﷺ, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected the message of Islam and also protected the Prophet sallallahu we'll do a brief summary of things that have transpired until now, so the 13 years of Makkah, and then inshallah we'll move to how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters into the city of Medina al-Munawwara. So remember that the first 3 years of Nabuwwah were very, very difficult for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is an entire story, where at the beginning the Prophet ﷺ had to find himself and understand himself and bring his family to the call of Islam as well. So it's very, very challenging, but he did that with a great and a huge amount of determination, perseverance, courage and persistence and firmness in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After bringing his immediate family members and then choosing select people, as you remember at the beginning of Islam, what the Prophet ﷺ did that for the first 3 years he developed those human beings. So he didn't say you start doing this in terms of spiritual worship and religious worship. He prepared them as human beings and how to interact, how to deal, how to be there in society, how to be there economically, be there financially, and all of these ways he was trying to establish these people of great character, of great understanding, of great morals and personalities in that particular area. And then he developed these people until finally, as you will remember, in the first 3 years or so, Islam flourished and there was the people who accepted Islam. And then the torture and the violence carried on against the Muslims. The Prophet in Dar al-Arqam was a place where he nurtured the Sahaba, their iman, strengthened their resolve, was a place to counsel them, was a place to reassure them, a place for them to get together and learn more and study more and find that place of training for them to develop themselves physically, mentally, as well as spiritually as well. And then slowly Islam was further strengthened by the acceptance of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab and also the uncle of the Prophet Sayyidina Hamza. They also accepted Islam as well. And then the Quraysh carried on resorting to different ways of attacking Islam and the Muslims. And then the first migration took place to Abyssinia. And then by the 9th year and the 10th year, you will remember the siege that took place. And for 3 years, the Prophet ﷺ was there and he was boycotted in all ways and forms. And then in the 10th year, the Prophet ﷺ changed his tactics and his approach and started approaching the different tribes. And even though he was rejected by 26 tribes, he still persisted and he carried on until he came across the 6 lads from Khazraj, and then those 6 became 6, and those 6 became 75, and the first Bay'ah of Aqaba that took place, and then the second Bay'ah as well that took place finally, which enabled the migration for the Muslims to take place from Makkah to Medina. And then finally yesterday we discussed the actual migration that took place finally when it was the Prophet Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and also the efforts of Sayyidina Ali, Asad ibn Bakr, and then Abdullah, also the son of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. So all of these things have taken place up until now. But needless to say, the 13 years that the Sahaba Ikram have lived, it was a challenge to say, in very light terms, a very, very big challenge in terms of their aqidah, in terms of their belief, their perseverance, their resistance. But throughout these 13 years, none of the Sahaba Ikram whatsoever did any form of injustice to any other person, to their family members or to the non-Muslim. None of the Sahaba Ikram attacked any other person. The Sahaba could have gone and attacked Abu Jahl, could have gone and attacked Abu Lahab, could have done so many things, but they didn't, because this is not what Islam teaches. Islam at all places, at all times, always teaches you to coexist, to live together, to interact, to engage with the other, and to have that diplomacy, and have that communication with each other, and not to resort to violence. Because a person who resorts to violence actually illustrates that he is incapable of communicating. When you are incapable of communicating, then the only thing that you can do is be violent. So the Prophet ﷺ, for 13 years he negotiated, he dealt with them, he tried to reason with them, all of these things again and again and again, and he never resorted to violence whatsoever. So for my brothers and my sisters, when your parents tick you off, when your children tick you off, when your brothers and sisters tick you off, don't resort to violence, because that's an easy way, and that's the coward's way of reacting. Try to communicate, take your, whatever you may have, your feelings, your emotions, your reasonings, whatever you have, and channel them in the right way, the way the Prophet ﷺ did for 13 years, again and again and again. And finally, when he realized that I'm not going to make any headway, then he peacefully moved away. He didn't start bombing people, start destroying property inside, you do this, you did that, and married, none of these things. peacefully, he migrated away, this is how he taught the Sahaba Ikram, that if they don't let you go, if they want to keep your belongings and everything, then leave it, because you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are very, very important lessons for us to understand as well, on how to interact, how to engage, and more importantly, how to communicate with the other. You will never find somebody who is completely in tune with you. Even your wives are never in tune with you. They have their own agenda, you have your own agenda, and sometimes you click, and the majority of the times you don't click. So you'll never find that 100% compatibility with your own spouses, with your own children, and let alone other people. But that doesn't mean that you stop engaging, and stop communicating, and stop trying. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. 13 years, continuous trying. And this is what we need to do here in this city, in this town, in this country. Carry on trying to communicate and make sure that the way that we approach them and engage with them and articulate our thoughts and our concerns are in the best possible way. Prophet ﷺ could have migrated the first year after Nabuwwah because he knew exactly what the Quraysh were like, what they were going to do, what they had been doing, and after the first year of persecution he could have said, look, pack up your bags and let's go. But he didn't do that. He tried again and again and again to convince them. And this is what you need to do here as well in this country. Wherever you may be throughout the world, you have to communicate, you have to reach out to the other person and show them who you are and what you are, and not just become indifferent to them and not cocoon yourself away from society. Be part of society, just the way the Sahaba Ikram were in the financial aspects of society, in every single facet of their life. They were part and parcel of that community as well. So I encourage you all to make sure that you mix in with the people that you're living amongst, and then you become people that they can approach, people that they can realize that, wait a minute, this is a decent human being, he's not a terrorist, he's not this, he's not that, he's a good, honest human being. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ achieved in those 13 years, that none of the people of Quraysh, none of the tribes of Quraysh could point a finger at any of the Sahaba Ikram and look at their character and find a flaw in their character. Because the Prophet ﷺ constantly worked on their character again and again and again. Do this, don't do this, don't do that, to perfect their character, their morals. And this is what we lack in our society now, that we try to work on our deen, but we've forgotten our character. Your character is part of your deen, your character is part of who you are. So deal with those people just the way you deal with the people outside, at your workplaces, in your community, with your neighbors, exactly the same way that you deal with your fellow Muslims. Exactly the same way that you deal with your own blood and family members. This is how you have to have that equality, the way you interact with every single human being, and not have a differentiation between mere rishtedar, mere dost, mere yara, and Muslim, kafir, no, it doesn't work like that. Had the Prophet done that, he wouldn't have tried to convince all of these people, and the people wouldn't have come to Islam. And he did that again and again. So this is our duty as well, that wherever you may live, engage, interact, communicate to the best of your ability, and fulfill your mission the way the Prophet ﷺ did. So we finally come to Medina, which is the new chapter of Islam, where the Islam will begin afresh and anew. And the Prophet ﷺ has gone there because, not out of choice, but he's been forced out of Medina. And even when he was leaving Makkah, and the 3 nights that he stayed in Hira, this was the vantage point at that mountain where you could see the city of Makkah. Every time the Prophet ﷺ would see it, he would only cry, and he would say, I'm being torn away from you, I have been expelled from you, but I don't want to go. Because this is everybody's land, this is the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore you should have a connection to this land. Not just because you own property, not just because you have a business here, not because you have fond memories when you were a child. No, this is the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore you have a right and responsibility towards the land and the people of the land as well. It's very, very important for you to understand that, not just Pakistani, the whole world is the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be faithful to the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you are khalifas of the entire earth. So wherever you go, you have responsibility to the earth as well as the people of the earth as well. Just the way the Prophet ﷺ illustrated in those 13 years and even before that to every single person that he interacted with. So we finally come to Medina al-Munawwara, and there's so many lessons and obviously that we can learn from Medina al-Munawwara as well. But quickly I'll go through the checklist of the Prophet ﷺ is that they embraced Islam, they reformed themselves, and they remained patient and persevered and determined, and they sacrificed their wealth and their blood and even their lives. And the Prophet ﷺ intellectually prepared them, morally prepared them, ethically prepared them in every single way that he could. At the the same time, the Prophet ﷺ, he planned for every eventuality. I mean, we've discussed this in quite a lot of detail, that don't just wait for a miracle to change your life and to change your life around. You have to prepare to the best of your ability. So the Prophet ﷺ planned at every single stage, but he remained flexible and innovative, and he left the success to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He coexisted with the Muslims, and then he controlled himself in spite of all of the oppression and everything that they did. The women played a vital role as well in the beginning of Islam, and they played a vital role throughout Islam as well. And the Prophet ﷺ, throughout his 13 years in Makkah, showed that we have to always look at the best in people. Don't always look at the evil in people and the bad traits in people. Always look at the goodness inside them and work with that goodness, and overlook whatever they may be doing, but work with that goodness and try to change them slowly and win their heart over as well. Trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and depending upon Him after you have prepared to the best of your ability, because there's two types of Muslims. One Muslim is he who doesn't trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatsoever, and he just prepares for everything. He says, that's it, I'm going to do whatever I can do, this is everything that I can do. The second type of Muslim is that he completely trusts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and does no preparation whatsoever. The first one is unsuccessful, and the second one is unsuccessful as well. You have to have the balance and look at the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he planned to the best of his ability as well. So make sure you have this balance in your business, in your home, in your religious affairs, every single thing that you do, make sure that you plan, and then you believe it and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. The Prophet ﷺ continued to develop the morals, the honesty, the loyalty, the proficiency, and the faithfulness of all of the Sahaba Ikram as well. And the main thing that he taught the Sahaba Ikram in those 13 years in Makkah was that never allow financial interests to overcome that which is right. Because the Qurayshi, the people of the Quraysh at that time, it was a financial interest which prevented them from accepting the deen, accepting the message of Islam, because they were going to lose money, they were going to lose the power and control. So this financial interest kept them away from Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ always taught the Sahaba to do that which is right, even though your wealth may go, your time may go, your experience may go, and even if your life may go, do that which is right according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I remind you again, which I haven't so many times, that always do the right thing, and not always the right financial thing, the right religious thing, because that is where the true success is. So, the double summary of that now, but we finally come to Madinatul Munawwara and the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So it is a new phase, it is a new chapter, and a new advent. It's also a new opportunity, and this is where the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam establishes his home. So he doesn't, think that this is a foreign land, and I'm going to go back to Makkah, and this is some of the mentality that unfortunately our Pakistani people or whichever people have come from the Indian subcontinent, they have this mentality, and this actually is been books have been written on this, which is called the myth of return. That they've come here with the intention that we're going to go back and we're going to chill out, but now they've realized there's no really there, there's no nothing, there's no security there. I see Tirana, but it's too late now, because you've wasted all your money over there because you've got nothing there. So they've had for 20, 30 years this myth of return, that we're going to return back, and therefore they've invested everything back into Pakistan, and they haven't put roots down here. And the first thing the Prophet ﷺ does is that he establishes a home, he puts his roots down in Medina. It's a foreign place, it's a new place, he hasn't been there before, anything like that. He doesn't really know the people, he's only met them once or twice, but he knows that this is where he's going to live. He's made the intention, and therefore he needs to be part of society. The first thing that he does after building the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he builds his home as well. This is who I am, this is where I'm going to live. And he doesn't just do it here, he purchases the land as well. So he abides by the rules and regulations of the area and the customs. He purchases the land from two orphans, and he pays their full price, and he doesn't get a discount or anything like that. I'm the Prophet of Allah. Just like many Maulvis that go around and say, Maulvis have it, and then you give a concession. No, I'm a firm believer that every single person is equal, and you shouldn't take away the haq of somebody else. And if somebody does it voluntarily, that's a different thing. But you, as an individual, whether you're in a position of authority or not, should always pay the full due that is on you. And the Prophet ﷺ did that. The first thing that he did when he entered into Medina, he purchased that land, and he paid the full price to that, so that in the future nobody could turn around and say, wait a minute, this is my land, you took it wrongly or unjustly, you never paid the full amount, anything like that. So there's no court cases later on going on, because you did it the right way. So everything that you do in this country as well, don't do the Jalal way, don't do the Beimani way, and don't try to go through the loopholes and get away from the law of the land. Do everything according to the law of the land. So when you're doing your accounts, especially for those people who are self-employed, make sure you are upright in your accounts. Don't do anything money, because it's going to come back, it's going to have a bad image of you and of Islam as well, that this is what Muslims do, and they're not really part of this country, they're not part and parcel of this society. And this is the first thing, the first lesson the Prophet ﷺ was teaching. Put your roots down, this is the home, because Allah Ta'ala has created this for you, and you must be part and parcel of that society. So the Prophet ﷺ establishes his home when he reaches into Medina al-Munawwara. At the same time, he establishes equality between all of those people who migrated from Makkah and those people of Medina and the Jews that were there, and even the small pocket of Christians who were there. There was an equality between all of them. And the Prophet ﷺ established this citizenship that everybody is going to abide by the same rules and regulations. Nobody is better or higher or lower. Everybody's going to protect each other, be there for each other, and abide by the same rules and regulations. So he did all of these things. It is vital for us to understand the Prophet ﷺ and why he did these things, because we have to apply these things here in this very country. Don't just think that this is the country of the Queen and the King and whatever the Parliament. No, if you're here, then obviously your right is to be here, but to make sure that you fulfill the rights of the citizen. Make sure you fulfill the rights of, that every single other human being is here as well. So be part and parcel of society. So just before we enter into Medina, Prophet ﷺ, as you will remember, he stops on the way to Quba, and this is where he also builds the first masjid of Islam. So the Kaaba was built by Sayyidina Ibrahim a.s. and before that Sayyidina Adam a.s. But the first mosque or the masjid which was built by the Prophet ﷺ was built, obviously purpose-built. I'm not talking about the musalla, because the musalla, there's two differentiations that you should keep in your mind. A musalla is any place, any property which you just pray on, just like the Jalama we call it, which is musalla. So I could have a musalla at my home, and just before this mosque was built, the previous mosque was a musalla. It wasn't a purpose-built mosque from the foundation, it was just a property which was converted and you were praying in there, and therefore it is a musalla. However, a masjid is when it's formed from the foundation. So the first purpose-built masjid from the foundation was Masjid al-Quba, built by the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala, and also Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala. Remember, Sayyidina Ali was there, he was sleeping on the bed of the Prophet and finally when he gives all of the amanat, all of the deposits back to those people, then he rushes to find the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, and he finally reaches him, and he had so many blisters on his feet, and his feet had boils on them, and they were bleeding, just so he could meet the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, to make sure that he was okay. So they all participated in building the first masjid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first purpose-built masjid, which was in Quba, and this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the masjid al-Mussisa ala taqwa min awwal yawmin ahaqqa an taquma fihi rijalun yuhibbuna an yatatahharu wallahu yuhibbul mutahhirin. That this is the first masjid which was based upon taqwa, and every time whenever you build a masjid, it's not for fame, it's not for glory, it's not for izzat, it's not for people who are going to say, in the masjid praying, you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain nearness, proximity and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa is that crucial ingredient people must have, not children nobody. You're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very important. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that this masjid was built upon taqwa, and this is where you should go and you should pray, and this is the place where those people come in who have purified their bodies as well as purified their minds and their hearts as well. So the masjid is to gain taqwa, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not fight and dispute and arguments and accolades and titles, none of these things, solely for purification of the body and the soul. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about 10 kilometers outside of Medina, he stays there for about 4 days. And the first thing that he does in Quba is he builds the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not a koti, not anything else, he builds the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have all heard of the various hadiths related to the importance of building a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you build it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala builds you a home and a palace in the gardens of paradise as well. So the Prophet he has done that. He's built the first masjid in the city of Quba at that time. And before the Prophet enters into Medina, the Sahabi, his name is Zubayr ibn Awwam, he leaves Medina and he finds out that the Prophet is in Quba, Kuba, and he goes there and he greets the Prophet ﷺ, and he takes gifts with him as well. And he takes 2 new shirts, kameez, because imagine Prophet ﷺ has been traveling for so many days and they haven't changed clothes, they haven't, obviously they took the bare minimum amount of resources with them because they had to travel light. So then this Sahabi, Zubair ibn Awam, he goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he gives them with these new clothes, and the Prophet ﷺ accepts the gift, and then they travel from Quba to Medina Munawwara. But along the way, remember Abu Bakr Siddiq and the Sahabi, the companion, he was there with the Prophet ﷺ throughout every single scenario. He is sometimes walking in front of the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes at the back of the Prophet ﷺ, on the right and on the left, just in case somebody out of nowhere attacks the Prophet ﷺ. So he's so eager to protect the Prophet ﷺ. And just before they enter into Medina, because Abu Bakr Siddiq is going to the front, to the back, and to the side, the people of Medina assume that Abu Bakr Siddiq is the actual Prophet ﷺ. They hadn't seen him, the majority hadn't. But then immediately when he realizes that, then he pushes the Prophet ﷺ forward. So anyway, Zubair ibn Awam, he gives 2 kameez to the Prophet ﷺ, and then they wear that, and all of the people, the Ansar and the Muhajirun in the city of Medina at that time, they were eagerly anticipating the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ, because they know that with the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ, barakah will come into their lives, and also he will go there, he will arbitrate, and he will mediate, and he will remove all of the injustices and reform society. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ will bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but more important than that in their mind is that they want to get away from the fitna, corruption, the wars, the torture. They want to get away from all of these injustices. So this is what they're truly waiting for somebody to come, the adil, the person who is upright, and for him to sort out all of our affairs. So they're eagerly anticipating the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ, and all of the kids and ladies and the men of the Sahaba Ikram of Medina and Makkah, they're there and they're waiting on both sides to the entrance of Medina at that time. And as soon as they see the Prophet ﷺ, the entire city of Medina at that time erupts with joy, with happiness, with elation, and they start singing the song of طلع البدر علينا من ثنية الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير داع. This is what they start reciting and singing very, very loudly. The question is that they knew the Quran, the Sahaba from Medina knew the Quran, because Prophet had taught them. Similarly, the Sahaba from Makkah knew the Quran as well. So you could argue that, wait a minute, the best way of inviting the Prophet and welcoming him is to none other than read the Quran. Yes, there's a place for the Quran, but when you are overcome with joy, then you express yourself in your own emotions, in your own words. And this is what they were doing. They were expressing themselves in their joy and their happiness in their own words. So they're singing this praise of the Prophet ﷺ, that the moon has shone over us from the valley of Wada, which is the valley that the Prophet ﷺ was coming from. And we owe it to show gratefulness. So they are being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the messenger to them. And they're saying, O messenger of Allah, O messenger of Allah, you have come to us with a message that we will obey. You have brought to the city nobleness, no honor, waqar, izzat, welcome, or best caller to Allah Almighty. This is how they read the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ doesn't rebuke them, doesn't shout at them, "Oi, Quran paro." He doesn't do that. He appreciates this mode of this expression. And he appreciates the arts, he appreciates poetry, he appreciates this different form of expression as well. So the brothers and sisters who are in different fields in their life, if they work in media, if they work in the TV, if they work in different parts of society, as long as you express yourself in a good way, in a positive way, and it doesn't go against the principles of Sharia, then you're absolutely well within your rights to express yourself, whether you're using a caricature or a cartoon, whether you're using fonts, whether you're using art to express yourself, or music to express yourself. Obviously there are limits to all of these things, but you are allowed to express yourself in a way which is befitting and not against the principles and the ethos of Islam itself. So here, Prophet ﷺ doesn't prohibit them, and he doesn't rebuke them, but he expresses his approval of the way that they're expressing their happiness of the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ. So people who do a nasheed, people who use various instruments or anything like that, as long as you're not singing about women and cars and drugs and things like that, and you're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or praising the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala or talking about something which is positive and beneficial in your own way and form, it's fine. It's permissible for you to do that, but as long as you're doing it in an appropriate manner. Just like every single year, people from Abyssinia and people from different tribes would come into the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala every year, and it is the same day with which the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala arrived in Medina. So that same day, on an annual basis, people from different tribes would come into the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and they would perform martial arts. They would perform in different ways, just like acrobats and just like you see circus people. In a similar fashion, people from different tribes have a different way of expressing themselves. Just like if you've seen and you watch rugby, you see the New Zealanders, you see how they express themselves. Everybody has their own way, their own culture and own way of expression. So there's no harm in that, and you can't say, well, this is un-Islamic and you can't do it. You can express yourself as long as you're not doing it in a Besharam way or a Behaya way. It's absolutely fine for you to do that. So these people would come on an annual basis. Prophet ﷺ would remove the curtain from his little kirki, in his home, because it's connected to the masjid, and Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha would put her head on the shoulder of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, and they would both view it, and they would both look at it and appreciate it. And then when she was happy, Prophet ﷺ said, have you had enough? And then she would say yes, and then they would obviously go back and sit down as well. Similarly on Eid, people would come and they would sing. Women would come into the house of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, and they'd use their dove, they'd use other forms of instruments, and they would sing. And then Sayyidina Umar would come in and he would say, what are you doing? And Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq would come in and say, what are you doing? This is shaitani, this is satanic. But the Prophet ﷺ, he removed his cloak from his face and he said, look, everybody has a way, a time of expression, a time of joy and happiness. This is our Eid, this is our time for joy, and there's no harm. Let them do that. So as long as you're doing it and the words that you are using, the format that you are using, there's no intermixing between men and women, within the parameters of Sharia, it's fine for you to express yourself. So people express themselves in a different way. If you want to do the choir here in the UK and use Islamic machines or Islamic literature in a choir form, it's absolutely fine for you to do that. Because it's part of the custom of expressing yourself here in the UK. If you want to express yourself the way the Moroccans do, the way the Egyptians do, it's entirely up to you, but you're fine to express yourself. So that's just related to how the people of Medina, they showed their happiness and their joy when they saw the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet he invited all of the Sahaba Ikram, obviously, and they were all following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ did, obviously, which I've mentioned to you already, was purchase the land from those orphans and pay the full price for that land as well. And this is where he laid the foundations of the masjid as well as the foundations of his own home. After that, the Prophet ﷺ, the first address, so the first speech that he gave to the people of Medina, to the city of Medina, it had three aspects to it. So it was a religious speech, as well as being a political speech, and also being a social speech as well. So he combined all of these three things. You can remember the Prophet ﷺ when he said to Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the ambassador to Medina, he asked them what is the social status, what is the economic status, what are they going through, what are the problems, all of the things that are happening in Medina. So he understood how he needed to address the people and what they wanted to hear as well. And remember when they came for the Aqaba, at Aqaba, and they pledged their allegiance to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet said, we have to do all of these 6 things, and they said, what will we get in return? They didn't make any false promises like MPs do and ministers do in Pakistan and other countries. Jewel market, they get their votes and then they're nowhere to be seen. Prophet ﷺ just mentioned one thing, and that is that in return of you doing all of these things, you will get Jannah, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first statement that he makes, because he is their leader, remember? They have chosen him to arbitrate and to govern Medina at that time. So the first statement, the first speech the Prophet ﷺ makes is very, very simple, yet very powerful, very eloquent, full of wisdom, full of hikmah. And this is why the Sahaba and mentioned the Prophet ﷺ was the most comprehensive in his speech. He would say extremely few words, but it would be extremely comprehensive in terms of what it entailed. And the Prophet ﷺ merely mentions just 3 things, and it addresses all of the concerns of the people of Makkah, it addresses all of the concerns of the people of Medina, and also reassures them, and also addresses the Jews and the Christians, every other person, just in 3 simple sentences. And I'll share that with you in Arabic, and then I'll translate it for you in English. The Prophet ﷺ mentions in Ya ayyuhan nas. And he addresses all of the people in Medina, not all Muslims, all Muhajirs, all Medina people, no. Ya ayyuhan nas, addressing every single person who is there. Because remember, the Jews of Medina will be gathering and thinking, oh, here he is, look, he's come here, and what trouble is he going to cause? Just like when immigrants come to the UK, people are always worried about their jobs and what's going to happen, but you have to dispel all of those myths. You have to reassure them, you have to address them and engage with them. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ goes, Ya ayyuhan nas, all people, all the people, afshu salam, spread peace amongst yourselves. So he's telling people that we're not here for war, we're not here for power, we're not here to overthrow, we're not here to do anything. The message of Islam, he's not saying all of these things, but he's just saying a simple word. O people, O mankind, afshu salam bainakum, spread peace amongst yourselves. So this is the message to the Muhajirs, to the people of Ansar, be peaceful to each other. People of Ansar, to the Muhajirs, be peaceful to each other. And collectively, be peaceful to the Jews and the Christians and every single other person in Medina. This is how you need to live. Simple words, but look at how he mentioned it. Afshu salam wa at'imu ta'am. The second command of the Prophet ﷺ is feed the poor. Feed the poor, because remember, before this, what's happening between Aus and Khazraj? They're fighting, they're disputing, they're in a war. So the Prophet ﷺ saying, finish this war, finish all of these things, maintain peace and tranquility amongst each other. And those people, due to the effects of war, those people being downtrodden, those people who are destitute, those people who are poor, the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging to work together, just like we're doing the food bank and other people help those community people who are in need. The Prophet ﷺ is telling the people of Ansar, your brothers from Makkah, they need your help. And also the people of Makkah and Medina, other people in Medina also need your help as well. So feed those people who are poor, feed those people who are in need. Just one simple word. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentions, so he says, وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. So he's addressing here the Muslims here in particular, and he's saying, during the night, you need to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whilst the majority of people are sleeping. So whilst people are sleeping, this is the time for you to connect with your Lord, time for you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he also mentions to these people that you need to maintain your ties of kinship. So those people, due to the Aus and the war and the tribal war and everything that's been happening, what happens as a result? Relationships break off, you move away from your mother and father and your children, all of these things happen. So maintain peace, come together, feed those people who are in need, rejoin those ties, rekindle those ties and reconnect yourself back to your community. Look at this cohesive integration, communication. These are all the things that the governments are telling you to do now. And this is the first command the Prophet ﷺ gave the people of Makkah and gave of Medina. Why are we forgetting these things? We just think that no one's had a point and then any of them. No, you have to integrate, you have to communicate, you have to coexist, you have to do the same things that the Prophet ﷺ ordered the Sahaba to do at that time. That maintain ties with those people. Feed those people who are in need, help those people in need, make sure you are a source of peace to every single person in the city of Medina. And then in your own time, when you have done all of these social things, then you should do the religious thing, which is go and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the political statement of finish the war, finish all these things, social reform, come together, help each other, and religious reform of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In three simple lines. Ya ayyuhan nas, afshu salam, wa at'imu ta'am, wa sallu bil-layli wan-nasu niyam, tadkhulu al-jannata bis-salam. If you do all of these things, then you will enter the gardens of paradise with absolute ease, serenity, and peace. Remember the promise the Prophet made to them when they came at Aqaba, that if you do all of these things, then I will guarantee you Jannah. And here again, he's reminding them of the promise that he made. So he hasn't forgotten, because you ask me MPs in Pakistan, what happened to the promises that you made? Oh, gee, bus, with the boy, and they brush over it. The Prophet doesn't forget that, and he's putting them at ease and reminding them that I'm here for the right reasons, not here for anything else. I'm here to maintain peace, maintain ties of kinship, to feed those people who are in need, to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also to get you back into the gardens of paradise. These are simple yet so powerful, comprehensive words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It puts every single person at ease. So the Muhajir, they have been concerned, we have no food, we have no wealth, what's going to happen? The Prophet has ordered for people, those who are poor, to get fed. The Ansar were thinking, what's going to happen here about our war and peace treaty? Put them at ease. The Jews put them at ease. How to get into Jannah, how to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reassure, put everybody at ease. And this is same thing that we need to do here in this country, in this land, in this very town. We need to maintain peace with every single person. We need to help those people who are in need. We need to maintain the ties of kingship as well as friendship. With other people, and then we also need to make sure that our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is strong, not just in the month of Ramadan, but throughout the day, throughout the year, throughout the months as well. And we will enter the gardens of paradise through our social reform and through our religious reform, both combined. Simple statement, 3 lines in Arabic and 3 lines in English. That's all the Prophet said. But look at how powerful and how comprehensive it was. You could write an entire essay and a thesis on just this statement of the Prophet ﷺ. So he's made the statement and he's made it absolutely clear of his purpose, of his intent, and by purchasing land, he's showed people that I'm here to stay and putting roots down. I'm part and parcel of this community and this society now. So I urge you to do the same thing. Buy properties here. That doesn't mean you get excessive mortgages, but I'm saying that put your roots down here. You report here and here, forget that. Leave that. This is your land, this is your home, this is the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where you're going to live. Your children are not going to go back. Believe me, they're not going to go back. You may force them once a year, or if you may pass away, they may take you back to Pakistan, but they're not going to go back. This is their land, that's your land, but you need to connect with this land, because it's still a land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ, after making the statement, reassuring everybody, and then he needs to settle himself, he needs to obviously stay somewhere. He doesn't have anything in his house yet, or any property. So all of the Sahaba, the people of Ansar, the people of Medina, they invited the Prophet ﷺ, that stay with us, and they take the bridle of the camel of the Prophet ﷺ, and start pulling it, and come here, you stay with us, you stay with us. The Prophet ﷺ orders them to leave the bridle of the camel, because it was obviously guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the camel walks on its own, and it goes and eventually stops at the house of Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari, and may Allah be pleased with him. And he was the uncle of the father of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is maintaining those ties and kinship as well, and how we also maintain ties and kinship as well. Wherever our family and friends may be, go them, see how they are, what they're doing, and don't just break away from them. So the Prophet ﷺ, he stayed with Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari for 7 months. 7 months whilst his house was being built, and he was an active part of it as well. He didn't just order the Sahaba, Jao, Mera Kar Bana, just like movies in Pakistan say, Oi, Jaake Salan Leke, Roti Leke. No, you have to do it yourself. Prophet ﷺ himself would carry bricks, and he built the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He built his own house as well. He didn't participate actively in that situation. He didn't just sit down, I'm the governor, I'm the ruler, please I come from. No, he ordered every single muhajir and ansari to go out and to work, not just sit at home, because it's very easy for people to come in, go over to the Arab Sea, no. Prophet ﷺ ordered every single Sahabi to make sure that they go out in the marketplace, learn new skills. All these people from Makkah, they were tradesmen. So they had never done agriculture in their life, not a day's worth of farming. However, all the people of Ansar, they were all farmers. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he brought them together, the Muhajirs with the Ansar, he told them to learn from each other. So the Ansaris learned how to trade, and the Muhajirs learned how to farm. And they worked together, and from day one, not just after a week, you go and you check in and you sign in and you get your money, and you've been applying for work anywhere, and they say, yes, you have. But reality is you haven't. The Muhajirs from day one, they got out into the community, into the society, and started learning new skills, benefit that community and benefit that society. Not just take, but will give back to society as well, because this was their new home. So I urge you as well, don't just sit at home and think everything's going to be hunky-dory. You need to be active, you need to go out. If you haven't learned something and you need some new skills, go out, learn them, study, educate, go to people, find those people and learn new skills the way the Sahaba Ikram did, the way the Muhajirs did, the way the Ansaris did as well. So the Prophet ﷺ, this is what he did. It's very, very important for us to remain active as well in our communities. So he's living with Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari, and there's so many stories to relate to you about the events that took place whilst he was living with Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari, and we never have enough time, unfortunately. But that's why this is just a glimpse, as I share with you every single day. Please do go onto the website and find books, on the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and you will find so many beautiful gems related to the Sahaba Ikram, the Prophet ﷺ, his interaction actions, and just make you smile, your heart smile, and your body smile as well. So go and learn and study. It will bring you closer to loving the Prophet ﷺ, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. I'll just give you a few examples of how Prophet ﷺ lived in Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari. Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari was one of the few people in Medina who had a double-story house. And he obviously wanted the Prophet ﷺ to live above them, because obviously he's higher than the Prophet ﷺ, should have a penthouse, we can almost say. But the Prophet ﷺ knew that he would have lots of people coming in, going out all the time, and that it would be better for him to stay downstairs. So Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari, he was there living with his family members upstairs, but they would only stay in one corner of the house. Why? Because they didn't want to disturb the Prophet ﷺ in any way or form. And once there was a bowl of water that fell, and those days the houses were made out of mitti, so the water would very easily seep through. And as soon as obviously the water fell down, they only had one chadar which they were using for their eating and for their sleeping, for all of their purposes. He took that immediately and tried to prevent the water from falling down to the Prophet ﷺ. Other instances where he would prepare the food for the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ would eat, and then whatever was left, Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari would go and find the food that was remaining, and then not just find the food that was remaining, but he would also retrace the steps, retrace the actual place where the Prophet ﷺ would put his lips on the glass, or put his finger on into the actual bowl, and he would eat from the same place and drink from the same place. Why? Because he knew this was the barak. This was blessed because it touched the lips of the Prophet ﷺ. Another incident, once he gave the Prophet ﷺ a salam which had garlic and onions in, and the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't eat it, he just left it. Normally he would eat whatever he gave, but he left it. And then he was Parashan, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, is garlic and onion haram? If it's haram, I'm not going to eat it for the rest of my life. That's it. You haven't eaten it, I'm not going to eat it anymore. But the Prophet ﷺ reassured him and said, no, it's not haram, it's just because I speak to the angels all the time, and garlic and onion disturbs them, so I'm careful and considerate of how I speak to angels. However, Sarde Namazi, and you know exactly what they have for the start and for their main, for their dessert. They don't care about the angels, let alone care about you. Look at how considerate the Prophet ﷺ was. And then even Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari, he stopped eating garlic and onions because he wanted to talk to the Prophet ﷺ in the best of breaths, in the most fragrance of breaths as well. So the Sahaba Ikram, they were learning from the Prophet ﷺ every single day. So after the Muhajirin, they have entered into Medina, and they are starting to integrate into Medina. The Prophet ﷺ, he's making sure they are an active part of society, and they're doing everything that they can to help the people. And the Ansar, what they did, any excessive land that they had, they would give that to the people, to the Prophet ﷺ, that this is your land, we give it to you, and the Prophet ﷺ would distribute it to all of the people who had left Makkah at that time. Similarly, any fruits that they got from their gardens, from the trees and whatever they were cultivating, they would come and they would give it to their brothers. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did, that he created a fraternity. When you go to university, you have fraternities, don't you? But he, the Prophet ﷺ, he joined the people of Makkah to the people of Medina and said, look, you need to share everything. Share your skills, share your wealth, whatever you may have, live with each other. This increased their love, this increased their understanding, and also integrated them into that society as well. And if we don't consider those people in our community to be brothers, let alone human beings, then how are we ever going to engage with them and learn to live with them? This is what the Prophet ﷺ did, that he put them together, you need to work together, you need to talk to each other, you need to integrate, communicate, coexist. These are all of the reforms that the Prophet ﷺ was doing. In spite of all of this, as you know, if you ever left your hometown, those people who are very attached to their hometown, people who have traveled to different countries will know and appreciate this. When you leave your hometown, you leave your home country, you will always have a void, in your heart. Your home watan is your home watan. And this is what the Sahaba Ikram had as well. That they had loved their city of Makkah at that time, so they were missing it, missing it a lot, and they would cry because due to the sheer loss and missing of Makkah al-Mukarramah at that time. But the Prophet ﷺ would keep them engaged, and then would constantly reassure them as well. Then at one point the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands to the heavens and asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to place the love of Medina in the hearts of the people of Makkah twice as much as the love that they had from Makkah at that time as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made their hearts soften towards Medina as well, and they slowly started to love Medina just as they loved Makkah, and even more than Makkah, because the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala was amongst them as well. So learn to love the country that you're in. Yes, your home country is your home country. Nobody can replace your mother. Nobody can replace your mother, but you learn to love your wife. You learn to love your children. You learn to do new things. Nobody can love your home country the way that you love your country, but learn to love the country that you're in, the community that you're amongst, the people that you walk with and talk with. This is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the way of the Sahaba Ikram as well. The Prophet ﷺ was doing his utmost best socially to reform these people, integrate these people, make them work with each other, and he made sure that there's no more fights and disputes between Aus and Khazraj as well, and try to get them to embrace Islam and work together as well. And also the Prophet ﷺ, finally, what he did is that he created the first constitution. The first constitution was decreed by the Prophet ﷺ in the city of Medina. So up until this time, they have coexisted, they have worked on equality, equal terms, they have learned how to be citizens, they have learned how to be tolerant of each other and their way of life. How they did things in Medina is different from the way that they did things in Makkah. But they learned how to be tolerant to each other, to love each other, and to interact with each other. Finally, the Prophet ﷺ, he creates the stool, the constitution of Medina. And there's lots of points, over 10, 11 parts, 13 points in the constitution of Medina. And I'll only share a few with you, inshallah, today, and encourage you to go and learn and study about the first law Prophet ﷺ passed for social, for society, for the entire community. Prophet ﷺ, the first thing that he mentioned, the people of Makkah, the people of Medina, they are all one ummah. They're all one ummah, that we're all together. We're all together because this is our city, this is our home, and we must coexist and live together. So the people who were non-Muslims, so like the Jews especially, Prophet ﷺ included them as part of this constitution and said, we are all part of one family. One ummah. Today we understand the ummah as just as the Muslim ummah. This is one understanding of the term ummah. The Muslim ummah in Iraq, the Muslim ummah in Egypt and places like that. However, this is not the true way that the Prophet ﷺ used the term. The Prophet ﷺ included the Jews, included the Christians, included every single person inside the boundary of Medina, that you are part of us. You are our family, you are our community, and we are part of you and you are part of us. When you're part of the same family, you look out for each other, you respect each other, you tolerate each other, you love each other. These are the things that the Prophet ﷺ was instilling into the Sahaba Ikram by this constitution. So we are part of this British culture, we are part of this society. Yes, they live their life in a different way, we live our lives in a different way, but we still need to coexist, we still need to communicate, we still need to love each other and work with each other for the greater benefit of society, for the greater benefit of mankind. So that's the first thing Prophet ﷺ reminded all of these people, the Muslims, the Muhajirs, the Ansar, the Jews and the Christians, we are one ummah, one community, that we must work together to protect each other. And the Prophet ﷺ said that what the Jews do, religious freedom as well, what the Jews do, they have their religion, they have their way of life, nobody will disturb them. We have our way of life and nobody will disturb us as well. That equality, that tolerance, that religious tolerance, and also religious pluralism as well. We are provided that here in this country, so why are we going out and trying to kill people and make other people's life difficult as well? This is what the Prophet ﷺ did as well. He encouraged them and said, you have to always encourage order that which is good and forbid that which is bad. To the Jews, to the Christians, to the Muslims, everybody, the rule applies to everybody. You always have to do good and you have to forbid that which is bad. Everybody knows what is good, and everybody knows that adultery is bad, everybody knows that cheating and lying is bad, everybody knows this is ma'ruf, this is understood. Nobody needs to be told what is good and what is bad. So all of them have been told that you have to do that which is good, that which is right, and avoid that which is wrong, avoid all forms of aggression, avoid all forms of fighting and disputing and things like that. No mischief, no murder, and none of these things. You won't go and you give refuge or shelter to a person who's a mushrik. So this is one thing Prophet ﷺ stipulated, that if a mushrik comes to you, you won't give him a safe haven or you won't give him protection, but you will protect each other because you're part of this one community and one society as well. And if there's any disagreement, if there's any dispute whatsoever, you come to me and I will arbitrate and I will mediate and I will resolve the situation. You will not cut each other or kill each other or fight and dispute with each other as well. So there's so much more obviously to learn from the Constitution of Medina, and believe me, quite a few theses have been written on the Constitution of Medina, the first constitution written by the Prophet ﷺ, and also for the entire mankind at that time as well. And we need to learn of how the Prophet ﷺ brought these two cultures together, these two communities together, these people together, and encourage them to coexist, to tolerate, to work with each other, and to become better human beings, and to work together as one community, as one nation, as one unit. And this is lacking in our society. We need to put down our roots here, just the way the Prophet ﷺ did as well. And look at how the Sahaba followed in sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as well. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to truly understand the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ's life, the command of the Prophet ﷺ gave, which was not just for his people, for his time, it was for us as well. For us here today, it's for all time till the end of time, just like the Quran is there till the end of time as well, because the Prophet ﷺ was divinely guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember the first speech, if you can remember anything from today, remember the first speech of the Prophet ﷺ that he gave on a political level, on a religious level, on a social level. Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, O mankind, every single human being, afshu salam, spread peace and tranquility amongst yourself. Spread peace and tranquility amongst yourself. Afshu salam wa at'imu ta'am, and feed those people who are hungry, feed those people who are in need, help those people who are in need, and also maintain the ties of kinship as well. With every single person in the community, maintain friendship and ties of kinship with them, cordiality, understanding with them. Also pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the middle of the night whilst other people are sleeping. So don't disturb other people, go about with religious duties without hindering other people. Don't make it difficult for another person to carry on with his life as well. So, and then you will enter into the Jannah, to God's paradise, with absolute ease and tranquility as well. So this is what we need to remember, especially in this country, wherever we may live. We live a life of peace, life of coexistence, life of interaction, of engagement, and life of tolerance as well, the way the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll continue with the new chapter of Islam, which is in the city of Medina, and how it develops, how the community develops, and how this is